Good evening. My name is Noah Herndon, and this is the Groundview. Today we have the opportunity to interview the presidential candidacy of Brad Heredia and Lila Gebhart. We have the opportunity to discuss their message of here and now, which talks about being present rather than always moving forward at a quick pace. We hope you enjoy this segment on the Groundview. Good morning, y'all. It's so good to have you on the Ground View, Brad and Lila. So good to have you here.
Excited to be
Thank you.
here. Thanks so much.
Absolutely. Now, just to go ahead and get started, if y'all wouldn't mind just introducing yourselves both to me, the Team Pack student body, and the viewing audience. We'll start off with Lila and then go to Brad.
Sweet. Well, hi everyone. My name is Lila. I am from Stamford, Connecticut. And yeah, I'm super excited to be running for vice president this year at National Convention. I've been involved in Team Pact for a lot of years. I think somewhere around 7 or 8. And so it's so exciting, and such a pleasure to be able to run for office this year.
Yeah, that's awesome. And again, my name is Brad Heredia. I'm from the Kansas City, Missouri area. Pardon me. And I am super, super excited to be running as president this year. I've gotten to know Lila a good bit over this past year and gotten to become much closer friends with her. And yeah, I just look forward to this entire process. It's been such a pleasure and so fun.
Awesome. And one of the things we'd love to hear is, Lila, you kind of touched on is just, how did you get into Team Pact and how long have you been in Team Pact and what's been your experience there? Brad, we can start with you and then go to Lila.
So this is my 5th year in Teen Pact, actually. I started with the 4-day class whenever I was 13. And so that was my first ever time getting thrown in this government camp that is called Teen Pact. And a lot like other people, I was pushed and shoved into my Capitol attire and sent to this little camp that I didn't want to go to. And it was Wednesday night when my life was changed, actually, after Teen Pact. I remember like thinking on Monday night, because I wasn't actually with my parents, they sent me with another family. And I was still on Monday night thinking, oh, I'm not going to come back here next year. I'm going to text my mom and say, hey, I don't want to come. But by Wednesday night, my life was changed. The way that I saw people loving each other was unlike any other like love I've seen high schoolers have for each other and genuine Christian love. And that spoke to me. And that's actually the night when I gave my life to Christ officially. I had prior knowledge about Christ and about Christianity, and I lived in a Christian household. But that was the night when I truly like decided to give my full attention and my full love to the Lord. And I think my passion for Teen Pact and my passion for what Christ is doing through Teen Pact has only grown since then.
Lila?
It's kind of funny because Brad and I kind of have like different stories. My brothers both went to Teen Pact before I did. And so they went to, state class, they went to the 4-day class. And then the next year I was sent to the 1-day class with my older brother. And so we all three were kind of in Teen Pact in different areas. And I went through the 1-day class for a few years. And then my older brother, he staffed, and then he was like, hey, Lila, I want you to think about being intentional. And Lila, here's this cool word. And like, let's talk about this. And, like, let's explore our faith together. And I was like, wait, that's insane. um, and sort of kind of as I grew up through the 1-day class, and I watched my brothers go through the 4-day class, and I watched kind of as Teen Pact changed them, but more importantly, kind of how Christ worked in them and through them. I was just so inspired. And so by the time it was my turn to go, I was so excited to go. It was something I'd waited for years. So I finally, put on the dress clothes and I went. But I kind of leading up to it never really fully understood how deep Teen Pact could be, and how big of an impact it actually could be. I'd seen it in my brothers, but I never actually understood it or experienced it myself. And so, similar to Brad, kind of on the Wednesday night, I didn't give my life to Christ, but I kind of learned what it was like to walk out my faith. And it was it's just such a small thing, but it was one of the first times I raised my hands in worship. And I'd always felt a calling to, but I had never done it because I remember looking around at the other girls in my church or looking around at the other people in my church and going, nobody else is doing it. How could I? And so that was one of those first moments where I learned to walk out my faith. And then when I went to Congress a few months later, that was where my life was really changed. I really began to kind of like find the Lord in every circumstance. And that was where I honestly fully accepted him. So.
Wow, that's absolutely incredible to hear how y'all both kind of had those experiences on Wednesday night that encouraged you to continue with Team Path and just influence you in your faith regarding that point. Now, I do kind of want to shift a little bit and just ask, y'all are running for president and vice president. I want to ask what inspired y'all to decide to run and what inspired y'all to run with each other? I don't know which one of you would like to start.
Would you like to start and I can go second?
Yeah, sure. So this is actually a really good question. Brad and I kind of we talked a little bit last year at Judicial. We were like, wait, wouldn't this be insane? But we didn't really seriously consider it. We were just kind of like, hey, that's an idea. Between Judicial and kind of January-ish, we both talked to several different people, and we're kind of like, I don't really know if this is something the Lord is calling me to, especially with this person. And it wasn't until kind of middle of January, towards the end of staff training, that Brad and I sat down and had a conversation. And we both kind of entered into the conversation like, not really sure, like we kind of want to run, but we're not entirely positive about that. And then we sat down, we prayed and we started talking, and we kind of figured out that the way that we wanted to run a campaign would be very similar. And so as we kind of had this conversation, I personally felt like the Lord was really calling me to run with him. I saw how Brad can lead groups of people in a very special way, and how different our characteristics are. And so because of that, we're able to balance each other out really well. And so I was kind of thinking as we were talking, I was like, wait, Lord, is this something that you want me to do? I was never really thinking that I would be the one to run for vice president. I always felt like it was so much work and such a big deal. And I was never sure if that was something that I felt like the Lord was calling me to. But as we sat down and had that conversation, I kind of just realized that running for vice president and running on a presidential ticket is such a cool opportunity. And it's honestly an investment into the people around us. And it's an investment into our relationship with the Lord. So we kind of talked, and our message kind of almost clicked right there. And it was so cool to see. I've always been super inspired. I mean, back when I was a one-day student, back in 2018, I think it was, I would literally sit as my brothers went to NatCon. I would watch all of the live streams, all of them. I would just sit in front of a computer all day long for days on end, watching all of the live streams. And I remember in 2018, the elected president and vice president was Carissa Gould and Toby DeMoss. And I remember my little 12-year-old self, or I think I was 11 at that point, but I was so inspired by the way that they led each other, by the way that they led the Teen Pack Nation, and by the way that they spoke and presented themselves, even as teenagers, even as people that were not that much older than me. And ever since then, I've watched as president and vice president have run through the election process and then been elected. And I've just been so inspired by the way that they led one another and led the Teen Pack Nation. And that's something that has kind of really impacted my decision to run personally, is just my seeing that in kind of the challenge that God placed on my heart to grow this season, and to have an impact on the people that I was around.
Awesome. That is wonderfully said. Yeah, just running for vice president or for president and vice president on a presidential ticket. When I initially thought about the idea of running, I'll be honest, I wasn't entirely sold on it. Just like Lila said, I was kind of scared by the thought of being able to run a campaign and everything. As you know, last year I ran for senator, and that was a good deal of work, but it was so fruitful. Getting to meet people at NatCon, getting to go through that entire process was extremely growing for me. And I only knew that a presidential ticket and running a campaign is going to be that much more. And it has truly lived up to be something that's really incredible. And I think I've grown in incredible ways this year from running. And just like Lila said, we had that conversation in mid-January. And after we went home and back into our weeks, we knew that this next semester for us was going to be one that was very, very busy with work and school and travel staffing the Teen Pack. So we knew that it was going to be hard to find time to like devote to certain things, but we knew that running for president and vice president was something that we actually want to prioritize, something that we want to take time out of our lives and put aside into serving. Because I have personally seen so many campaigns that have impacted me and that have actually served me. And I think people often forget sometimes that campaigning and that the elections process actually serves the people. And I think that's something that we need to remember. Like, even in the regular political process outside of Team Pact, us electing our representatives, our senators, and people who are in our political realm, they represent us and they serve us. And so it's so cool actually getting to do that kind of on a smaller level. And it's been incredible. I remember, I think it was third or fourth week of January, near the end, I sat down with my Bible one of the days thinking about like a message, and the conversation I had with Lila about, hey, we want to be like present and we want to be intentional people, not just make our campaign all about votes or all about the onstage glory for ourselves. We want the glory to go to something higher, because it's truly about someone higher. And that's whenever the message came to mind, here and now. Like, we're created for the here and now. And that truly solidified why I wanted to run, because God has placed us in this opportunity and given us this chance that's not common. There's very, very few high schoolers who are able to get up in front of 300 people or 1,000 people in generals and get to share about themselves, share about what Christ has done in them and what Christ is doing around them, and about their message and about things in their lives. And it's just such a cool opportunity. And yeah.
Oh, absolutely. And something I'd love to hear about actually is Joel's message of here and now, if you wouldn't mind going into that a bit more. We'll start with Brad and then go to Lila.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So the message we're running with is titled Here and Now. And so I'll just kind of give you like a brief rundown of our message and what it means. And so as Lila and I were talking, we understood that the demographic of Teen Pact is primarily high schoolers, and primarily either young or like on the younger side of high school or on the older side. And so either of those, when you look forward into your future, you have like 4 years of high school, or you have 4 years of college, or you're about to enter the workforce and enter real life. And I think it's easy to get caught up in the future, because God is placing so many beautiful things in front of us, and he's going to give us so many opportunities of ministry like in our lives, whether that be in college, whether that be in the workforce. And I think us as teenagers, we often forget that we're here for a reason. You know, God has placed us here for a purpose, and he's given people directly in front of us, like our family members, like the people we go to school with, the people we see on a daily basis. And he's given us a ministry that's placed right in front of our nose. And so the message here and now kind of touches on the fact that we're created to live right here. We're created not to be too focused on the future, but to be excited for it and to love the people where we're at. Lila?
Yeah. This message, like Brad said, it honestly started from the first conversation that we had, and has just like, as we were kind of searching our hearts for something the Lord had been teaching us both, it was just like, it was so clear that that was what God had us running for, or running on. And it's funny because as kind of I staffed through this season, there were so many moments where in rendezvous or in like one-on-one conversations, people brought up the idea of, hey, I just want to be present this week. Like, I have so much going on back home, and I just want to be present with the people I'm around this week. And I was like, that's so cool. And it was something that God has been teaching me so personally, of how to kind of take where I am at as an opportunity for ministry. Because oftentimes we go through life and, you know, we go to school or we go to sports, and we just go to go. We don't go with a purpose. We don't go because God has placed us there specifically. When we get in our cars and go to school, we don't have a moment of thinking, okay, God has placed me here. Let me be ministry to these people. And so as kind of like Brad and I were talking, and as this message came up, like God has just been teaching me so clearly that everywhere we are, whether that's in our families, whether that's at our schools, whether that's in sports, and whether that's here in Teen Pact, whatever that looks like, we are placed here. We are placed now, and we are placed for a reason. He has us here to minister to our friends, to minister to our family. And more than that, we have a purpose here because we can grow here as well. We can minister to the people around us and they can minister to us. And that's such a beautiful opportunity. And if we're so focused on, oh, what comes tomorrow, or what comes 3 days from now, or what comes even a year from now, then we're going to get lost in those beautiful, some people might call it monotony, but those beautiful moments in between that God has for us of learning and of growing and of ministering. And it's funny, when I was little, my mom bought me this huge stack of missionary books. I'm sure you guys are familiar that it's like a specific brand and they just come out with so many books. And I would read those like it was food. Like I just read them constantly and I loved them. And I always grew up with the mindset of, in order to do ministry and in order to serve God, I have to go abroad and I have to, sacrifice every single thing, and I have to go live in some remote jungle where no one can reach me, and I have to minister to the people there. But the truth is our entire lives are a ministry. And um, I heard somebody once say that, getting saved is free, but relationship will cost you your life. And so as we seek to press in closer to the Lord, that ministry should be an active part of our life, and it is. And so we can do that ministry where we are now. We can do that ministry without having to go to the remotest jungle of the Amazon. And instead, we can do that right where we live. Like I can do that in Connecticut, and Brad can do that in Missouri. And that's such a cool opportunity, and it's so neat to be able to recognize that.
No, and it's excellent to hear. It's interesting. Y'all's message actually mirrors something that my pastor was talking about just this last Sunday in terms of being present specifically for those Christ moments, because there are certain times where we're so focused on moving forward with our lives that we miss the moments that are laid out right in front of us, where we can serve in a form of ministry that we may have dismissed if we weren't so focused, if we were not focused on actually being there and being present. And so I really do enjoy that message, and I think it's one that Team Pact will absolutely appreciate hearing come NatCon. No, I do want to ask, have y'all, you kind of touched upon it, but has there been any point, whether on this campaign or, in your time in Team Pact, where you've seen this message really play out in your life? Lila, you can start and then we'll go to Brad.
Yeah, sure. So I kind of already touched on this. But I actually go to school. So I'm in my senior year of high school, and I actually go to a private school, kind of part-time. I also homeschool. It's a little bit complicated. But the way that this message is like so tangibly played out in my life is exactly kind of the idea of sitting in my car every morning being like, man, it is 6 a.m. I do not exactly want to go into school, sit through classes, and be a light for Jesus. That's not kind of my favorite path to take here. And one of my favorite things to do is leave the house early and then go to school early and kind of sit in my car and have some Bible study. So this is one of those days, and I was having some prayer time, and God just kind of put a name of someone on my heart, and I was like, wait, I have such a unique chance to minister to these people. I take it for granted. I go to school. I don't think about how I could have an impact on them, and how, more importantly, Christ could have an impact on them. I just go to school to learn, and then I come back home. Um, and that was just a super tangible way that I felt like the Lord was calling me to live in the present. As a senior, I have so many things coming up in the future, and there is tons to worry about. And I'm sure so many Teen Pactors feel that same kind of weight on their shoulders to kind of live into their future. But if I didn't have that moment of, okay, I need to just be here, I just need to be now, the Lord would have never kind of put that name on my heart, and I never would have been able to walk into that school confidently, knowing that the Lord had placed me there for a purpose. And then besides that, as I touched kind of before, even on classes and things, I mean, that was my constant prayer, like, God, make me present. And there's always stuff going on at home. There's always stuff going on with your friends. There's always stuff that you have to do. But if we can kind of have a heart set that is focused on living in the present, I mean, yes, like, do things for your future. Don't just ignore your future. But have a heart set focus on the present, because God has so much for us here. And God has so much for us to learn, and God has so much for us to serve others with.
Brad?
Yeah, the message of here and now, even those two simple words, has been just a long thread that I've seen throughout this entire semester, and it's been crazy. I don't think I initially expected to see it played out as much as I have already. So I first wanted to kind of start off that little thread with saying what's happened in my life recently, and it's been so much like change since I was younger. And something about me is I used to swim for about 9 or 10 years, I think, competitively. And so I spent most of my life like on the road swimming every single day of the week, pretty much, except Sundays. And that would be we swam in a town that was an hour and 15, hour and a half away from us. And so the drive there and the drive back would pretty much mean we were constantly gone. And I was almost never in my hometown, specifically where I live, Maryville. And so that was just constant time away, constant time away. And until I originally decided, or finally decided to quit swimming, um, um, and kind of like focus my time and my energy in different areas because I realized that swimming wasn't something that I wanted to do in college. I recognized that God has a ministry directly in front of me in my hometown. And specifically this year, now that I've thought about the message here and now and truly started to like grasp it and understand it and pray, like, Lord, place people in front of me and allow my eyes to be opened and to see them. I have been able to make so many more genuine connections with people from my hometown than I have ever before in my life. And I think that's just such a testament to God's faithfulness to our prayers and how he answers them. Um, and actually, that idea of prayer is something that ties in huge, like with the message. Like I think of two words: proactive prayer, um, and that's just being constant in your prayer of saying, "Lord, I don't know what I'm going to do today. I don't know like what specific challenges or blessings that I'm going to see, but I want you to be active and I want you to be there with me through them." And so, a cool thing that I've been able to do this year, another sport has been volleyball. And so, God has placed those guys on my team directly in front of me and allowed me um, to be able to share the gospel with them and share how like Christianity is lived out in someone's life. And I think like a lot of them haven't been able to see that before, and I think that's just so valuable for us to live Christian lives.
Absolutely, no, and it's really good to hear just how this message has been impactful for y'all in these different ways, because it's something that students look for come NatCon is to see whether or not the message is genuine in candidates, and so that's fantastic to hear. Now, I do want to be considerate of y'all's time, so one of the last questions I'd like to ask is y'all announced very early in your campaign that you'd be running in the Vision Party, and I'd just like to ask, what were some inspiring factors there? Whichever y'all would like to go. Yeah, Lily, you can go ahead.
Oh, okay. Sweet. So there are kind of two facets of the Vision Party, or the reason that we chose the Vision Party. The first of which is kind of funny, and it's actually nostalgia. Um, but Brad has been involved in the Vision Party for a lot of years. My brother was involved in the Vision Party for a lot of years. So that was actually a kind of a little bit of a factor. But the other factor is our message here and now. We're calling people to live in the present. And so it's kind of funny that we're also in a party that is focused on vision. um, but I think that vision can mean two things. And vision can mean looking forward to the future, or vision can be having clear sight of where you are now. And I think that ties in so importantly with our message of just having a clear idea of where we are today and where we are now. Besides that, the Vision Party seems like honestly just an awesome party. It's like logistically, it is a larger party, but it's not like the smallest party. And so that gives us kind of a good opportunity to honestly sort of test the waters of the election and kind of see how that plays out throughout parties, if that makes sense. Brad?
Yep, exactly. I totally agree with Lila. I think us announcing our party earlier on was a way to allow people to kind of understand like where we are and what we're going towards. Just like Lila said, it ties in with our message very well. Sorry, I have allergies this morning. But kind of vision and what they stand for, like their whole idea of focusing on like the big picture ties in, I think, very well with like our morals and what we stand for as well. So
Definitely. And as we're wrapping up, I just wanted to ask, I offer this to every single candidate I interview, and that is, what is one last thing you would like to share with the Team Pact voting body? It can be regarding yourself, your campaign, your message, whatever you'd like to share. We'll start off with Lila as the VP and then Brad, the presidential candidate.
Thank you. I love this question. This is such a good question. Thank you for offering it. Um, Something that Brad and I came into this election season with was kind of the overall idea of unity. Like, yes, we have our message and we love our message. And yes, we have like our executive order and we love that. And we have our party stances and our press release, and that's so important too. But as we came into this election, we kind of realized that there were a few things missing from Team Pact elections. um, and a big one would be unity. Oftentimes it feels like different groups of people are sort of sitting in the corner, whether that's like an elected officials group or like a state class governor group or a state class senator group or even just kids from the same state, or whether that's staffers, whatever that looks like. There are tons of different groups in Team Pact. But Brad and I have kind of come into this season with the idea of we all should be involved in elections. Elections are a part that each and every one of us can play. And if you are in one group and want to be in the other group, like, we want you involved. We want everyone involved that can be involved. I remember being a first time national convention student, and I had already been in Team Pact for several years. And I remember having to text a sibling and say, hey, can you please come stand by me? Because I'm standing alone and I don't know what to do with that. And that's a super common experience. It's so hard, honestly, to enter as a first-time student into national convention. There's so many people, and it is so overwhelming. It's still overwhelming for me, and this is my third year. Um, and Brad and I really wanted to focus on that idea of genuine community. Our group meets are not the biggest group meets that you'll see this season, but Brad and I are trying to develop individual relationships with the people in the group meets. And it's the same idea. Like, we want every person that wants to be involved in elections or to be involved in elections. We want to have the chance to give people community as they come into the week. And so, kind of just one word that I would love to say to the Team Pact Nation is, whether you're running as a different presidential candidate, whether you're, this is your 8th time in Team Pact or your first time in Team Pact, let us make National Convention a year of unity. Like, let it be a chance for us to go in, and our first thought is to see someone that's standing alone and be like, hi, I'm Lila, what's your name? Not because we want to vote if you're running, but because we want a genuine connection, because it can be scary entering into such a large group of people by yourself. And so, kind of a word to the Team Pact Nation is, let's be unified this national convention, and let's be intentional. Let's reach out to those people that might not have anybody else to talk to. And if you are one of those people, reach out to other people, because I guarantee there are other people like that. Brad and I's vision for this entire campaign, and if we get elected, would be to bring unity to the Team Pact Nation and to allow us to be intentional with one another. Brad?
Yeah, extremely well said. If you might have noticed, but our campaign is ran a little bit differently than other campaigns in the past. Just like Lila said, with our group me style, it's been a lot less of a large group and instead more sporadic regional group chats. And one thing that we've tried to do through that is, instead of being super proactive with, I guess, I don't want to say meaningless talk, but just talk about random things, we wanted to be more intentional and more honestly unified, just like Lila said, with people. And so one way that we've done that is trying to reach out to people individually and bring them in, because we believe once NatCon comes, that those smaller regional group chats and that individual unity will touch so much more than just a big branch. And just like Lila said, NatCon can be really daunting sometimes. Being 1,000 students, it can be easy to get lost in the crowd and just kind of mindlessly wander. And so we want to give things to do and opportunities to get to know each other. And so one thing that we're going to do at NatCon as part of our little table setup is 2 of the days we're going to host little devotionals in times of worship during free time. And we think that's truly going to allow people to get to know each other better. And that's just something that we want to see happen more, is people loving each other and truly living out the message of here and now. Because once we get on the ground of NatCon, and even back home from NatCon, once the week ends, we're still called to live here and now. whether that be in Team Fact, whether it be in our homes, or whether it be when we're going on vacation and seeing people that we don't think we'll ever see again. We leave a message, we leave a track wherever we go. Is that track going to reflect us and what we want, or God and what He wants?
I think those are fantastic messages to be shared with the Team Fight Nation. I think that idea of unity is something that will be very awesome to see come NatCon when we are in person and when we're interacting with each other. And it'll be very, I think, what you talked about in terms of having those smaller times of devotional and worship at your campaign table is very unique. And I'm very excited to see that play out. Well, y'all, it's been absolutely fantastic to have y'all on. Thank you once again for joining me on the Groundview. I look forward to seeing y'all in person at NatCon.
Yes, dude, thanks so
you.
much. This has been so fun. This has been awesome.